Gambling is everywhere nowadays. It's in our video games, it's in our marketing. You open an ad for literally anything on any internet and you'll find somebody trying to push gambling for you. Some might argue that gambling is literally holding up the very fabric of our society right now just because of the amount of money that is put into these ads. But maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. Gambling is actually really fun. And maybe let's approach this from a different angle. Maybe gambling hasn't infiltrated these spaces that we hold so dear to us, but maybe it's because gambling is just everywhere there is something fun to do. So take all of the different elements inside of a video game. Most of them have some kind of gambling element to that. And maybe you've thought of this already. Maybe you already know where I'm going with this. And if that's the case, just sit tight. We're going to go over a couple of the different elements, specifically in Pokemon, that might be considered gambling, and maybe you've never thought about it before. Maybe you have. But either way, let's jump into it. Okay, so I think the best way to conceptualize this is let's first understand what makes a successful casino successful, and then let's try to tie it into how these different games and how these different mechanics could conceivably be just a really good casino. Okay, first things first, the variety of games. Okay, so a good casino needs to have a lot of different games with different odds in them in order to succeed. So this means that there's some kind of variety. You're not getting the same odds every time, right? You're going to a different table. Maybe you play blackjack. Maybe you play poker. Maybe you play roulette. Maybe you play baccarat. Maybe you play slot machines or some other specialty game. It doesn't really matter. The point is that if you go to any good casino, you'll be met with a whole variety of games that you could play. It might not seem like it because Pokemon is still just one game overall, but at the end of the day, each of these little things that we interact with inside of the game, whether it be encountering Pokemon in the wild, trying to shiny hunt, trying to play against a different opponent, trying to play against the computer, trying to beat the Final Four, each of these are, in a sense, different tables in the casino. You can choose which one to play, and each of them have different odds according to the game that they're being played as. Now, in a traditional casino, each table and each game has something called what are called house odds. Now, these are just one way of conceptualizing how many times you'll win versus how many times you'll lose, how many times the house wins, really. And we can use this same idea, even though the house isn't winning when we don't get what we want, we can still use this same idea to conceptualize how many times we win. And if it's a fun game, a game fun enough to come back to, right? That's the key, right? Casinos really work if the gambling piece is addictive enough so that you keep spending money, you keep coming back. And that's kind of the same thing that's happening to Pokemon too, right? You launch a game, you are running the odds. Every time that you encounter a Pokemon, every time you throw a Pokeball, every time you even attack a different Pokemon, you're spinning a wheel on roulette, you're hitting another card on blackjack, you're pulling the lever on a slot machine one more time. Let's get a little bit more specific. Let's compare catching Pokemon to a very common casino game, roulette. Okay, in both of these games, there's kind of a binary outcome. Either you catch the Pokemon or you don't, right? Either you win the bet or you don't. And there's also certain things that you can do in roulette to kind of widen your chances of winning. And in the same way, in Pokemon, there are certain things that you can do to increase the odds that you win, in this case, catch the Pokemon. Those things might be lowering the Pokemon's HP, giving it paralysis, some kind of status condition. These are all things that you have to invest into the game so that you can have higher chances of getting the result that you're expecting and that you're wanting to. Regardless, the odds might not be exactly the same as roulette. In truth, it's actually closer to craps, but that's a really hard game to explain and I don't really want to get into it, so we're just going to stick with roulette for right now. But in the same way, you can invest your resources in Pokemon and your time in Pokemon in order to increase the chances that you get the outcome that you're looking for. In the same way you can do in roulette, right? You bet on a broader group of numbers in order to get the result that you're looking for, right? So if I don't just bet on red, or, you know, maybe I bet on a couple extra numbers that are also on black too, right? Maybe I bet on green for some reason. Maybe I'm feeling really lucky. Something like that is the same idea that we're seeing in Pokemon, right? It's gambling. It's gambling. Maybe it's not with real money, and maybe that's the key point that everybody keeps driving home, but I don't want anybody to misunderstand the fact that this is still training people to become good gamblers and to get used to this. And like I said in the very beginning, gambling is fun. This is a fun mechanic. There's nothing wrong with this. In fact, if Pokemon didn't work this way, I don't know how you would do it. Deterministic games like Trackmania or other variations of this are work, but they still have some kind of elements of randomness to it. And without those elements of randomness, you're playing a game that just doesn't have that life in it. That little fire that when you win something, you really feel that rush. And what is that rush? That rush is the thrill of gambling. It's the thrill of gambling. It really is. All right, let's talk about something a little bit more niche, but something that's still definitely very popular, and that's shiny hunting. Okay, shiny hunting can be thought of kind of like, let's not move tables, let's stick on the roulette analogy, but it's kind of like just betting on green or white every time, right? It's betting in a way that you only have the smallest chance of winning, but if you do win it, it's a huge win. It is the most fun that you'll have playing this game, right? If you are going for shinies, if you're not going for it, you just happen to hit it, that's wonderful, right? But if you are going for it, if you are shiny hunting and you get it, it is a thrill that really doesn't come close to a whole lot of other things, especially if you've been on the grind for hours. If you've been pushing this button over and over and over, expecting a result and finally getting it, it is a thrill that I cannot describe to anybody who hasn't done it before. In the same way that roulette kind of works that same way, except instead of, winning a, couple pixels on a screen, you're winning real hard cash, That's a big deal. And it is kind of a little different. I don't know if you guys have seen some of these streamers who do the shiny hunts, and when they have put so much time into them, you've seen them get a little emotional, right? Maybe they break out into tears, maybe they start celebrating, jumping up and down, and it's hard to really feel that if you haven't done it yourself. I'm sure that a lot of streamers do kind of over-accentuate some of the experiences that they have for the sake of content. However, shiny hunting, I don't think falls into that category. I really do believe that these people really do feel the excitement that they're talking about when they get the shiny finally. The streamer that I want to use in order to kind of bring this point home is Disguised Toast. I remember a couple of years ago, he was shiny hunting for a shiny Wooloo, and he spent 15 hours or something hunting for this shiny. Now, Disguised Toast, I think, is a really genuine guy, especially he comes off extremely genuinely in his stream. I don't think he overdoes anything. But the moment that he sees that he gets the shiny, he jumps. He has a physical reaction, and you can see the relief that he finally has. He's hit the green, right? He finally hit the roulette button. And I think not anybody who spent enough time in that chat felt the same way that he did. Probably not to the same degree that Disguised Toast did, but certainly felt a similar emotion. And that's what I'm talking about. This is the thrill of gambling. Gambling is fun. Okay, so the final comparison that I want to bring forth is the Pokemon fighting community. The Pokemon, the official, the little website that they do, you see it all over the place right now. They do these official tournaments and try to win against somebody else. Now, this is just straight poker, right? Imagine sitting down at a table against somebody that you're playing against. You know what he could have. You know what he couldn't have, right? You know the combinations that you have, and you know what beats his hand. This is the exact same mechanics that are happening in something like Pokemon Showdown, right? You are playing against another person, and you are counting, you're betting on your hand beating his. Yeah, there's a little bit more prep that goes into this. You're not dealt the Pokemon at the very beginning, but you know what wins, and you can prepare to a certain degree against things that he might have prepared for as well. At the end of the day, this is the exact same mechanics that are going into Texas Hold'em. It's the same thing. So anyway, to wrap this up, I just kind of want to bring home the whole idea that Pokemon is gambling, and that's okay. Gambling is fun. Do it responsibly. Do it with pixels on a screen. Don't blow your life savings at a casino. Know where your limits are, of course, but enjoy the fact that gambling is a fun part of our society. Like, I think that this conversation is not nuanced enough. I feel like a lot of the nuance just gets lost in all of the crazy anti-gambling rhetoric, which to be fair, does make a lot of sense. People definitely do stupid things when they get addicted to gambling. But again, I've talked about that. That's not my point. And I think by this point, you probably know that that's not my point. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please leave a comment below with what you think about this whole discussion. I'd love to talk about it a little bit more. Thanks for coming on it with me, and I'll see you next time.